You know what word I really fucking hate? Prophecy. In my world, meeting as many gifted as I do, you meet a lot of people who claim to see the future. The problem with prophecy, though, is that there isn't really one future. There's lots of them. At best, someone can get a look at one future and tell you something that might or might not happen, and what good is that? Or, I guess in the case of what happened today, if they're really good at what they do, prophets might get a look at two futures. Still, I wouldn't take them too seriously. Or that's what I keep telling myself. Guess we'll just have to wait and see if one of them turns out to be right. I doubt it, though. If there's one thing I've learned in my time with the Seekers, it's that prophets are full of shit. This is Spines. So the stuff we dealt with over the past week didn't turn out to be related to the fight against the Splinter. Still, it sent me and Shan on a little adventure with Winry, so why not share it? It started with message boards and Reddit threads, like a lot of our missions do. Winry keeps a pretty close eye on people posting about supernatural experiences. 99.999 whatever % of the time, they're from someone who's lying or hallucinating or who just misunderstood what they saw. But every once in a while, if you know what you're looking for, you get a genuine report of a gifted person. Winry spotted something and brought it to Miranda. Miranda told her it was a waste of time, which is normally when Winry would have dropped it, but... well, I guess I already knew she was a softie. So she brought it to Shan, and Shan talked me into helping this poor girl in New York avoid certain and terrible death. Not a bad day's work, all in all. Here's the discussion thread that got us started on this whole thing. My brother and my sister-in-law are going to kill me this New Year's Eve. Please help. Intriguing, no? Turns out the person who posted this was named Chloe Parker, and boy, did she have a story to tell. After Winry did some recon and decided the story checked out, Shan and I ended up traveling to New York to sit down with Chloe. She met us in a park, made us put away everything we had with the reflective surface, and told us what was going to happen to her on New Year's Eve. It was the same thing that had happened to one of her friends on the 4th of July, a second friend on Thanksgiving, and a third on Christmas. We met with her on December 28th, which meant that if the pattern held, we only had 3 days. When Chloe sat down with us, she kept looking around like someone was going to jump out of the bushes at any moment. Except she wasn't afraid of anyone lurking in the bushes. She was afraid of anything with a reflection. Her first friend to die, Lulu, had started seeing things in mirrors 1 week before her murder. It started as vague shapes out of the corner of her eye. A little flash of movement, and then nothing when she looked at it directly. Then the shapes started staying put when she looked at them. But they were out of focus, distant, only vaguely human. And then, 3 days before she died, they started taking shape as human faces. 2 human faces. One she recognized for a couple reasons. First, because she knew what Chloe's brother Pierce and his wife Claudette looked like. And second, because even if she hadn't met Pierce and Claudette through Chloe, she would have recognized them from TMZ or the National Enquirer or one of those rags that follows around spoiled rich brats who don't do anything. They'd made the cover more than once. When she passed by mirrors or windows or anything shiny, Pierce and Claudette would leer back at her. Lulu told Chloe, of course. And of course, Chloe didn't believe her. She didn't believe her when she said she saw them. And she didn't believe her when Lulu said they'd start holding up knives for her to see. Then Lulu turned up stabbed to death in her apartment on the 4th of July, and Chloe finally believed. She knew Pierce and Claudette had done it. There was just one problem. On the 4th of July, at the time Lulu was killed, Pierce and Claudette had been hosting a very patriotic red, white, and blue gala full of press and witnesses and people watching their every move. They couldn't have done it. So Chloe researched them and spied on them and tried to figure out how they had done it. She put together most of it herself, and then Winry filled in the rest. Here's what they found. Some background on the Parkers. In some ways, they're similar to the Seekers and the Splinter. They're interested in human mutation. They're interested in special abilities. But they're light years behind the Seekers or the Splinter or anyone else who knows about our world. Their little group, the Parker Initiative, is focused on really minor shit by our standards. Sharper vision, denser muscle tissue, longevity. They're just dipping their toes in the water, and they have no idea how deep this water can get. I think the Splinter and the Seekers and all our counterparts around the world are pretty content to leave it that way. These boneheads might have money, but that's about it. But according to Winry, for all the Parker Initiative's uselessness, they do seem to have stumbled upon one legit gifted ability. The ability to see ghosts. Or rather, a species occupying a parallel dimension that some humans can perceive, and we've built a mythology of ghosts to explain them. This is old news to the Seekers, what ghosts really are and why some people can see them. So much so that it's not even on the list of abilities anyone is really looking for. Too common, not useful enough. Like I said though, the Parkers think small. So they've used their initiative to fund illegal research into women who see ghosts because they think these women are just seeing special frequencies or additional parts of the light spectrum or some shit. Mainly, their research is about trying to activate those abilities with pharmaceuticals. Chloe wasn't able to tell us exactly what happened with Pierce and Claudette, but she had a good idea. She was already estranged from the family at that point. But it seems like the Parker Initiative got really excited about one of the drugs they were testing out, saying they'd found the perfect way to activate some dormant genetic abilities. Even the most junior Seeker intern could have told them it didn't work that way, but they didn't know any better. Chloe didn't know when or why, but at some point, Pierce and Claudette took something, some kind of drug, and it changed them, sure enough. Just not quite in the way they were expecting. The second friend of Chloe's to die was named Wanda. She'd known what was happening to Lulu, so she knew what was happening to her as soon as it started, a week before Thanksgiving. She went to the police, but they treated her like she was crazy. Of course they did. When they looked in those mirrors, Pierce and Claudette were nowhere to be seen. And when they contacted the couple, they of course had no idea what this poor delusional girl was talking about. Why they'd been in Monaco that whole week. Just like with Lulu, it escalated until Thanksgiving Day. She thought she'd be safe with her family. She was wrong. They found her bled out in the basement of their home. At that very moment when she'd been killed, Pierce and Claudette were of course having their Thanksgiving spread photographed by Better Homes and Gardens. They couldn't have done it, except they did. The third friend, the one who died on Christmas, was Izzy. When Pierce and Claudette started coming after Izzy, Chloe vowed to stay by her side. She would do whatever it took, would intervene, would beg, would plead. She tried. She did. But it didn't work. But it did let her see how it happened. They were watching from the mirror in Izzy's living room. Her Christmas tree twinkled at the edge of the frame. In the center were Pierce and Claudette's faces. Chloe's hands trembled when she described them. She said they were like wolves, like predators, hungry and sharp and almost panting with eagerness. She understood then that they wanted to be seen. They wanted the fear. Maybe even more than they wanted the killing itself. It was all about the hunt for them. It happened around 10 o'clock at night. They moved suddenly and in different directions. Claudette dashed to the right, Pierce to the left. They vanished around the edge of the mirror's frame, but they weren't gone. Chloe caught flashes of other motion, on a wine glass, on a curved red Christmas ornament, on a gleaming metal lamp. It was as though they were hopping from one reflective surface to another. And then, in a blink, there they were, standing in the middle of the living room. Chloe tried to say something, She tried to stop them, but they were too fast, and the moment she saw the joy in Claudette's eyes, Chloe knew they were too far gone to hear her. She managed to escape, but Izzy didn't. I could see in Chloe's eyes that she won't forgive herself for that. Not for a long time. Just before she got out the door, she turned and took one last look. The last thing she saw was Pierce vanishing back into the mirror and speeding away. They were nowhere near the place, naturally. They were at the White House for a big Christmas gala, hundreds of miles away. And, of course, Chloe's own haunting started that very night. Pierce and Claudette, still spattered with Izzy's blood, flickered around the edges of her bathroom mirror. By the time we spoke to her, she knew she only had 3 days left. Shan turned to me as soon as Chloe's story was over. We could take her somewhere without any reflections, they suggested. I thought the same thing, but Chloe shook her head. I've thought of that. I tried it. I sat in a closet with nothing shiny inside. Her face twisted. I started seeing shapes on the edges of my vision. I think they were in the reflection on the surface of my eyes. It wouldn't work unless Chloe stayed in the dark forever. So much for that plan. Confrontation it was, then. But that was going to be hard without knowing exactly what their abilities were. Could they just split their consciousness in two? Could they mentally project themselves? Would we have to take them down in both locations or just one? And that's when Chloe gave us one more piece of information. I think it has to do with time, she said, and she showed us a picture. She noticed when she saw Claudette in the mirrors at Izzy's house that Claudette's hair was cut in a short, chic blonde bob. But the pictures from the White House Christmas party showed her with her hair still long and styled in careful waves. It wasn't until 2 days after Christmas that she posted an Instagram picture of her cute new haircut. That's when Shan and I figured it out. They were traveling back in time somehow. It was kind of brilliant. Be highly visible and far away on the date of the murder and then travel back to commit the crime a week later. It was clever, but I've seen better. Besides, these two are reckless and hungry and out for blood, and those types always make mistakes. And so we started setting up our trap. We guessed it would happen at the stroke of midnight, the moment New Year's Eve became New Year's Day. That would be the moment the Parkers would have the greatest number of cameras trained upon them, the moment the fireworks went off and the ball dropped in Times Square and they couldn't possibly be anywhere else. In the hours leading up to it, Chloe was a wreck. She sat in the middle of her apartment's little living room floor, rocking back and forth, staring at the shiny single mirror on the wall. She'd spent the day putting away or covering everything else shiny, every mirror and glass and window pane. If Pierce and Claudette had been smarter, they might have wondered why Chloe would do all that but leave a single mirror on the wall. But they weren't smart. They'd never had to be. While we waited, I asked Chloe why her friends. She told me it was because she'd chosen them over her birth family. The Parkers, you see, like to introduce their younger members to the initiative secrets when they turn 18. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance and ceremony, like they're the goddamn Illuminati. Pierce and Claudette had bought into it completely, swallowed the whole secret eugenics thing hook, line, and sinker. Chloe, though, she took one look at what her family was about and she ran like hell. If there's one thing Pierce can't stand, Chloe said, it's hearing anyone tell him no. And so, when he gained the ability to torment and pick off his little sister's new family, that's just what he did. Billionaires. They're so predictable, aren't they? It happened exactly when we thought it would. I heard a strange, sharp grinding sound as they slipped through the glass. "Hi, Chloe," Pierce said, and that's when I killed the lights. Night vision isn't one of my gifts, but fortunately Winry knows her gizmos, and she had a good set of night vision goggles for me to borrow. Chloe had been careful to seal up every crack, every single place where any particle of light might escape. She did a good job. No light, no reflections. No reflections, no escape. Just like we planned, I slowed time and grabbed both of them by the neck. And that's when things started to go south. I should have known better. I should have known that gifted with time travel related abilities might have had a better handle on the whole slowed time thing than most people. And that's just what happened. Pierce and Claudette both kind of shivered under my hands, and then they had moved back a couple of steps to where they had been a few seconds earlier. They stood there jabbing at the darkness with their weapons, unable to see anything. Here's the thing though, they weren't scared. Even through the night vision goggles, I could tell they were exhilarated, thrilled. Their teeth stretched wide in these ecstatic grins. Pierce managed to get me across the stomach with one of his knives. I healed it, of course, but it hurt like fuck. Then Claudette grabbed me and we started struggling. Pierce ran over to help. Problem with that though, when it's pitch darkness, it's hard to know who you're grabbing, or who's grabbing you. Which is why he accidentally snatched the back of Claudette's shirt rather than mine, and why she then turned around and slashed him across the throat. She knew the second it happened that she'd made a mistake. She froze and she whispered her husband's name. And that's when Chloe lifted the tablecloth that had been draped over the coffee table. At least what Pierce and Claudette had assumed was a coffee table. Really, it was a lightless metal box. And I pushed Claudette right inside and closed the lid. She fought for a while, banging on the lid and shrieking. Didn't do anything though. No reflections in that box, nowhere for her to hide. I said, "Stop fighting, Claudette, it's over. You cooperate with us, you can still have some kind of life." She laughed. I could hear it, even muffled as she was through the box. "I'll be out of here in no time," she said. "Futures aren't set. Futures are legion. My past me will know this happened. She'll know that Chloe survived and she'll stop this. She'll save Pierce. She'll have been watching ahead for a week. She'll know this is coming." And that's when I let the other shoe drop. I leaned down close to the lid and I told her what Shan was doing at that very moment. Time travel, or some version of it, isn't unheard of for gifteds. But it works in a lot of different ways and the rules are kind of hard to pin down. It's unclear whether time travelers are ever able to change history. Some claim to, but if we're living in the world they've produced, and if we don't remember anything else, how would we even know? That's why you can't take chances with this time travel stuff. The rules are awfully hard to prove. And that's exactly why Shan wasn't there with me. Shan was at the Parkers' penthouse, mingling with the glamorous crowd. I saw them in the background of some of the Instagram photos later. Everyone just assumed they were a model with some really cutting-edge, plant-like jewelry and accessories. I bet it'll be a big new trend within the week. At the stroke of midnight, just as Pierce lay dying on Chloe's carpet and Claudette was being wrestled into the box, Shan lifted their fingers into the air. A bright red bud bloomed from their fingertips. Then its pollen caught on the air and swept through the apartment. The people there remember it as a drunken, champagne-soaked night. Most of them realize they lost some time, but they attribute it to the weed and the cocktails and the pills. They remember being overcome with sleepiness and lying down to catch a quick nap on the couch or the rug or in one of the guest bedrooms. They don't remember seeing Pierce and Claudette fall asleep. They don't remember seeing Shan roll in 2 metal boxes just like the one my Claudette was in. They certainly don't remember Shan loading their host into those boxes and carting them away. This was what I told Claudette. That present her, here in Chloe's place, and past her, at the New Year's party, were both being sealed up. That she'd been cut off at both ends. She fell silent for a long time then. She didn't speak as Chloe turned her lights back on and cried and shook. She didn't speak as we rolled the box downstairs and into the panel van we'd rented. She didn't speak as we drove off into a brand new year. When we stopped to rest halfway through our trip, that was when she spoke. It was because Shan asked her a question. Shan had said nothing for a long time, but they suddenly turned and tapped the box and said, "Why did you do it? Why did you kill those people?" She laughed. Then she said, "Do you know what it's like to change the past? To feel the present reshape around you? It's like if you got hit by a tsunami but managed to stay on your feet. It's like feeling the entire ocean rushing past and around and over you and knowing you've conquered it. There's no rush like it. And there's no change bigger than taking a life. Remove a person who is supposed to be part of the world, and you ride that change back like a surfer. And it carries you just a little bit into the future, and then it crashes and you wash back into the present. Once you've done it once, you can never go back." As soon as she mentioned the future, I knew I was going to ask. I didn't really want to, but I couldn't stop myself. "What's the future like?" I asked, trying to make it sound casual. I thought about making some joke about flying cars, something to make it seem like I didn't really care. But I must have done a bad job pretending because Claudette laughed again. "You're scared of the future, little bird? I don't blame you. Want to know what's coming?" I didn't say anything. She already knew. So she said, "I'll give you this and only this, little bird. There isn't one future. There's one past, but there's so many futures, and they glitter like diamonds in the sand. But there's two futures that are closer than the others. Two futures fighting the hardest to be ours. In one, you save the world from the thing you've been looking for, this trumpet. And life goes on, and no one ever knows what you did, and no one knows your name. Now, as for this other future, this other one fighting to reach us, you fail, and the trumpet sounds, and this world dies. And that's all I'm gonna say, little bird." Shan and I looked at each other. Big fucking deal. We either stop the trumpet or we don't. Tell me something I didn't already know. Once Shan and I had snatched the Parkers, we went back to the burrow. We got a little bit of a scolding from Miranda for wasting seeker resources, but I could tell her heart wasn't in it. We locked Pierce and Claudette deep in one of the seeker holding facilities, in a room designed to contain no reflections whatsoever. That's Claudette singular, by the way. The one I captured, the one from Chloe's place, was gone when we opened the box. I was worried at first, but Shan pointed out that we'd captured the version of her from her past. We made sure she had only one future, and it was the one where she got locked up in a box at her own New Year's party and never saw a mirror again. Before we left New York, Chloe had stopped us. She was shaken, and her eyes were red, but she looked determined. She said, "Pierce and Claudette aren't the only evil, fucked up members of my family. Anything you need me to do to help bring them down, I owe you." I was still thinking about that when we went to update Winry. She looked troubled. Chloe's right. Just because we have Pierce and Claudette doesn't mean the Parker initiative is done. I just wish there was something we could do for these women they're experimenting on. I know it's not as bad as the Splinter or anything, but these poor women are having their powers activated without even realizing it. And who knows what the side effects will be. I told Winry what she already knew, that we don't have time to go after every unethical shithead with a hard-on for superpowers. But then Shan paused and looked thoughtful and said, "Is there someone else we could tip off, though? We might not be able to take care of it ourselves, but what if we could point someone else in the right direction?" Winry thought about it and then pointed at her screen. "Well," she said, "I do think there's one subject who knows more than the others. This woman here, Sierra Haraway, she's been asking a lot of questions. A lot of interesting internet traffic. She has a backdoor into their servers somehow. I don't think the Parker Initiative is onto her yet, but they will be if they get access to her computer. Shan smiled. Then why don't we make sure that doesn't happen? They asked. And why don't we make sure she knows who else they're after? The names of all the other Parker Initiative test subjects. And Chloe, her woman on the inside. They smiled then and took my hand. It'll be easier for her if she's not facing this alone. Winry nodded and smiled and wrote a note to be dropped off at Sierra Haraway's door. We can't do much more than that. We don't have time. You know, trying to save the world and all. But with any luck, Sierra Haraway will open our note and she'll use it to stay one step ahead of the Parker Initiative and find allies and develop a way to fight back. And as for what happens after that, no one knows. Not even prophets. I guess that's my New Year's resolution. I'm gonna resolve not to believe in fate, not to listen to prophets, and to go after the future I want. I told Shan that a few minutes ago. They smiled and handed me a glass and said, I'll drink to that. So we did.